The void whisper had not moved in 847 cycles. Commander Vex traced her three-fingered hand across the frost-crusted viewport, her breath forming crystals that fell like tiny graves to the deck. Outside, the stars remained unchanged, cold, indifferent, eternal. Her ship had become a tomb that refused to finish its work. "Power reserves at 2.3%, whispered Lina, the ship's navigator. Her voice cracked from disuse. The Xylorian language was designed for song, for resonance, for life. Now it sounded like stones grinding together. "Life support will fail in 11 standard hours." Vex closed her compound eyes. Each eyelid, 3 of them, translucent as moth wings, clicked shut in sequence. She had watched her crew die one by one over the centuries. First Kale, who walked out of the airlock when the madness took him. Then the twins, who stopped speaking and simply stopped. Now only Lina, old Jorik the engineer, and herself remained. "The beacon," Vex said, "still broadcasting." "Until the last erg of power," Jorik rasped from his station. His lower left arm had frozen solid cycles ago. He hadn't complained. Xylorians didn't complain. They simply endured. "No one is coming, Commander. The outer arm is empty. The trade routes collapsed 400 years before we launched. We are ghosts already." Vex turned from the viewport. Her reflection stared back, hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, the iridescent scales along her jawline now dull gray. She had been beautiful once in the way of her people. Now she was a monument to slow extinction. "Check the signal log again." Lina hesitated. The gesture was almost imperceptible, a slight flattening of her head crest, but Vex caught it. Hope had become the cruelest poison among the dying. Every time they checked the logs, every time they found nothing, another piece of them died. "Commander." "Check it." Lina's fingers moved across the frozen console. The display flickered, a bad sign. Everything flickered now. The void whisper was consuming itself just to keep them breathing. Then the display went white. Not the white of failure, the white of data, of signal. Jorik's chair creaked as he leaned forward. "Impossible. There are no ships in this sector. The charts." "The charts are 800 years old," Lina breathed. Her voice suddenly had color again. Vibrato. Life. "Commander, this signal is new. 7 hours old. It's a response to our beacon." Vex's hearts, both of them, stuttered. "Who?" The display resolved. Not Xylorian encryption. Not any encryption the dying ship recognized. But the translation matrix, running on fumes and Jorik's prayers, pieced together the header. "United Earth Fleet Vessel. Odysseus of Sol, response to distress signal, ETA. 42 hours message FOLLOWS." The text crawled across the screen. Vex read it 3 times, then a 4th. "Unknown vessel. This is Captain Elias Vane of the human vessel Odysseus. We received your signal. We are changing course. Hold on. Someone is coming." Silence filled the bridge. Not the silence of death. The silence of something far more terrifying. "Hope." Lina began to weep. A sound Vex had not heard in 300 cycles. Jorik's frozen arm cracked as he raised it in the old salute. And Vex stood frozen at the viewport, watching the stars as if she could see the human ship hurtling toward them. She couldn't, of course. The void whisper's sensors were blind. But somewhere out there, in the infinite dark, something warm and impossibly alive was coming for them. 42 hours, Vex whispered. Her reflection in the glass looked different now. Still hollow, still dying. But no longer alone. She did not yet know that humans were the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. She did not know that their help came with teeth. She did not know that rescue could be a different kind of terror. The Odysseus was coming. And it was bringing fire. The Odysseus of Sol did not drift. It punched. Commander Vex learned this first through vibrations, impossible sensations transmitted through the void whisper's dying hull. Her ship had been built for stealth, for silence, for the elegant mathematics of gravity folding. Humans, she discovered, had built their vessel like a clenched fist. "Their approach vector is insane," Lina reported, her voice now tight with something beyond fear. She had stopped crying. Now her crest stood fully erect, a Xylorian warning display. They're using hard burns, firing maneuvering thrusters like weapons. Commander, they're going to crash into us. Vex gripped her command chair's armrests. Through the viewport, she could finally see it, a speck of light growing faster than physics should allow. The human ship was angular, ugly, covered in what looked like welded scars and protruding weapon mounts that made no aesthetic sense. It was a beast, a beautiful, terrifying beast. Open a channel, Vex ordered. I've been trying. Their communication protocols are primitive. They're not answering because they don't understand the question. Jorik laughed, a dry, crackling sound. Primitive. They found us in the middle of nowhere with technology our ancestors couldn't have dreamed of. They used radio, Jorik, radio, like children banging rocks together, and then they amplified it with, Lina's voice faltered, with something else, something I can't identify. Vex watched the human ship grow larger, closer. It was decelerating now, but the deceleration was violent, jets of superheated plasma spewing from its front, turning the darkness into artificial dawn. The void whisper began to shudder. They're matching rotation, Jorik said quietly. Awe crept into his ancient voice. Manual alignment, no computers. They're flying that thing by hand. Metal screamed. Vex was thrown from her chair as the two vessels made contact, not the gentle magnetic docking of Xylorian engineering, but a brutal, grinding collision. The Odysseus had simply latched on, like a predator gripping prey. Damage report. Vex pulled herself back to her station. The displays were chaos, red, everywhere red. Hull breach, Lina said, but not on our side. Commander, the humans have drilled through. Drilled, not docked, not connected, drilled. Vex's instincts screamed at her to evacuate, to fight, to run. But there was nowhere to run. Her ship was a corpse. The humans were the worms. The air changed. For 800 cycles, Vex had breathed recycled atmosphere, thin, cold, lifeless. Now something new poured through the breach. It was warm, humid, thick with strange organic scents, oil, metal, something that smelled like burning plant matter, and beneath it all, the unmistakable musk of life. Living beings, breathing, moving, coming through. The inner airlock door, the one Vex had assumed would never open again, began to glow orange. A cutting torch. The humans were burning their way through. Weapons, Jorik said. We have none, Vex replied. We never had any, we were explorers. The door fell inward, with a crash that shook the deck. Through the smoke stepped something Vex could not process. A figure, taller than any Xylorian, wrapped in a suit that looked like armor and a pressure vessel combined. Its face was hidden behind a reflective visor, but Vex could see two hands, gloved in thick material, raised in front of it. Open hands, empty hands. The figure took a step forward, then another. Behind it came more shapes, 4, 5, 6 of them, all with hands raised, all moving with a deliberate slowness that Vex recognized. Caution, care, fear. Commander, Lina whispered, they're not armed. Vex's translator crackled. The humans were speaking, a guttural language that sounded like rocks falling down a mountain. But the translation matrix, barely functional, began to work. Atmosphere stable, biomatch negative, we need a medic. Captain, their atmosphere is thin but breathable. They're dying in here. Get the heaters through, now. The lead figure stopped 10 paces from Vex. Slowly, with movements that seemed almost ceremonial, it raised both hands to its helmet. There was a hiss of equalizing pressure. Then the faceplate lifted. Vex saw a face unlike any she had ever imagined. Flat features, 2 eyes, just 2, set in a fleshy mask of pink and brown. Hair, short and dark. The creature's skin was unmarked by scales or crests or any of the markers Xylorians used to read emotion. But its eyes. Those 2 eyes held something Vex understood without translation. Exhaustion, determination, and beneath it all a terrible, beautiful warmth. The creature spoke. This time the translator caught every word. I'm Captain Elias Vane of the United Earth Fleet. You're going to be okay. All of you, I need you to breathe slowly and not move suddenly. My medic is coming through. She's going to help. Behind Vane, a smaller figure pushed through carrying a white case marked with red symbols. Vex opened her mouth to respond, to say something diplomatic, something befitting a commander of the Zalorian Outer Reach. Instead, what came out was a single word. Why? Captain Vane smiled. It was the strangest expression Vex had ever seen. Teeth, exposed teeth. On most species, that was a threat display. But his eyes didn't change. The warmth remained. Because you called, he said, and we heard you. Behind them, Jorik collapsed. His hearts had stopped. The human medic dropped to her knees beside him, opened her case, and pulled out instruments that looked nothing like Zylorian medicine. She had 30 seconds to save a life she'd never seen before. She had no idea what his organs looked like. She started cutting anyway. The human medic's name was Kaya Tanaka, and she was terrified. This wasn't supposed to be her job. She was trained for human physiology, broken bones, plasma burns, vacuum exposure. Not whatever this creature was. The alien lay on the frozen deck, its chest barely moving, its skin a mottled pattern of gray and faint silver. 4 limbs, 2 hearts maybe. She'd seen something pulsing in 2 places during the initial scan. Someone get me light, she snapped. A human crewman dropped beside her with a portable flood. The alien ship was dark as a tomb, but the light revealed everything and nothing she understood. Vitals, she asked her wrist scanner. The device beeped helplessly. Unknown biology, no match in database. Wonderful, Kaya pulled out her field kit. Scalpel, sealer, syringe of broad-spectrum stimulants that would probably kill a human if used wrong. On an alien, the stimulants would do something, maybe. The alien's companions watched from the shadows. 3 of them tall, slender, with those strange compound eyes that reflected the light like gemstones. Their leader, the one the translator called Commander Vex, stood frozen with her 3-fingered hands pressed against her chest. Please, Vex said. Her voice was barely a whisper. Jorik is. His hearts are failing. He has maybe 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Kaya had worked with less, but never blind. Captain, she called over her shoulder. I need a guess. How close is their biology to ours? Captain Vane crouched beside her. His face was calm, the calm of a man who had made peace with death long ago. Not close at all, but they're carbon-based. They breathe oxygen. They have circulatory systems. That's like saying a fish and a bird both have spines. Then be creative, doctor. Kaya looked down at the alien. Jorik, Vex had called him. Old, worn. His skin was cracked in places, leaking a thin blue fluid that smelled faintly of copper. She touched his neck, found a pulse, rapid and weak in 2 locations. 2 hearts, definitely 2 hearts. She made a decision. Get me the cardiac stimulant, she told her assistant. Half the human dose, mixed with saline 2-to-1 ratio. That'll kill a person. He's not a person, he's something else. Get it now. The assistant ran. Kaya pulled out her scalpel and cut. The alien's skin parted easily, too easily. Underneath, the anatomy was a nightmare of unfamiliar structures. But she found the hearts. 2 small, fist-shaped organs, one on each side of what she assumed was the chest cavity. The left one had stopped. The right was fluttering like a dying moth. There you are, she breathed. The syringe arrived. Kaya didn't hesitate. She injected the mixture directly into the right heart, then began compression on the left, pushing with 2 fingers, gentle but firm, the way she'd been taught for infant patients. Come on, she muttered. Come on, you old bastard. I didn't cross 3,000 light years to watch you die on my table. Behind her, she heard one of the aliens make a sound, a soft, keening note that rose and fell like a song. Grief, or prayer, maybe both. The left heart spasmed. Kaya kept compressing. 10 seconds, 20, 30. The heart beat. Weakly at first, then stronger. The right heart, already stimulated, picked up the rhythm. Blue fluid began to flow through the alien's veins again, sluggish but present. Jorik's eyes opened. They were huge, dark, and impossibly old. He looked up at Kaya with an expression she couldn't read, but then one of his 4 arms lifted, trembling, and his 3-fingered hand closed around her wrist. His grip was surprisingly strong. The translator crackled. "You burned me." Kaya laughed. It came out hysterical. "Yeah, I did. You're welcome." Jorik stared at her for a long moment. Then his mouth, a small slit beneath his eyes, curved upward in something that might have been a smile. "Fascinating," he said, and passed out again. But his hearts kept beating. Commander Vex stepped forward. Her hands were shaking. When she spoke, her voice broke on every word. "Why did you do that? You know nothing about us. We could be murderers, parasites, enemies." Captain Vane stood up. He was tall, taller than Vex by a full head, and when he looked down at her, his shadow swallowed her completely. "Doesn't matter what you are," he said. "You needed help. We had help to give. That's the whole calculation." "That's not how the universe works." Vane smiled again, that strange, tooth-baring expression that made Vex's instincts scream. "No," he agreed. "It's not, but it's how humans work." The deck shuddered. Every light on the void whisper flickered and died. When they came back, the displays showed something new. Something hunting. "Commander," Lina said, her voice hollow. "The hive, they found us." Vex turned to the humans. For the first time, she saw fear in Captain Vane's eyes. Not of the hive. For her. The holographic display on the Odysseus was primitive by Xylorian standards. Flickering, low resolution, more art than science. But it showed the truth with brutal clarity. 3 contacts, moving fast, coming from the nebula's edge. "Explain," Captain Vane said. His voice had lost its warmth. Now it was the voice of a man calculating angles and ammunition. Commander Vex stood at the human ship's bridge, surrounded by technology that felt like something from her species' ancient past. Physical buttons, actual levers. The humans even had paper, flat sheets of processed wood pulp covered in markings. It was like being inside a museum of pre-spaceflight artifacts. But the weapons array on the view screen was no artifact. The Odysseus carried more firepower than any 3 Xylorian warships, and Vex suspected that firepower would be useless. "The hive," she said quietly. "They are not a species. They are a consciousness. A single mind that spans thousands of bodies, thousands of ships, thousands of worlds. They consume everything they touch, biomass, technology, memory. When they take you, you don't die, you become part of them." Vane's first officer, a scarred woman named Commander Reyes, stepped closer to the display. "How do you kill them?" "You don't. The Xylorian Collective tried for 300 years. We developed weapons that could shatter planets. The hive adapted within months. We tried psychic countermeasures. They absorbed them. We tried running. They followed." "Yet you're still here," Vane said. Vex met his eyes. Human eyes were so small, so limited in spectrum, but they held focus like nothing she had ever seen. "We are not here because we survived. We are here because we escaped. The hive let us go. They wanted us to spread fear, to broadcast our terror across the galaxy so that other species would surrender before the hive even arrived. And now they're coming back for you." "The signal," Lina said from behind Vex. The young navigator had been silent since the hive appeared, her crest flattened against her skull in pure terror. "Our distress beacon. We thought it was just a recording, but the hive. They can sense their prey across interstellar distances. When we activated it again, they felt us." Vane turned to his tactical officer. "Time to contact." 6 hours, Captain, maybe less. They're accelerating." "We can run," Reyes said. "The Odysseus is faster than anything in the fleet. We could be out of this sector in 4 hours." Vex watched the humans debate. They spoke openly, as if the Xylorians weren't there, or as if they had already decided to include them. That was the strangest part. These creatures had never met Vex's people before today. They owed them nothing. And yet... "And the Xylorians?" Vane asked. Reyes hesitated. "We have 4 survivors. We could take them, but the hive would still track their biosignatures. As long as they're alive, the hive will find them. Eventually. Eventually, Vex repeated. You mean when they've killed you too? Reyes didn't deny it. The bridge fell silent. On the view screen, the 3 hive contacts grew larger, still dots. But dots that moved with terrible purpose. Vex had seen what happened when the hive caught its prey. She had watched her sister's ship be overtaken, had heard the screams over the comm as the crew's minds were ripped open and devoured. She had run. She had always run. Captain Vane, she said, you should leave us, take your ship and go. We have lived 800 cycles beyond our time. We are ready. Vane turned to face her fully. His expression was unreadable. Ready to die. Ready to stop running. For a long moment, Vane said nothing. Then he walked to the view screen and traced his finger across the image of the approaching hive vessels. How do they track you? Psychic resonance. All Xylorians share a low-level telepathic field. The hive can sense it across light years. As long as we live, they can find us. So if you die, they stop. Yes. And if you don't die, but something confuses the signal. Vex frowned. That's not possible. Psychic resonance can't be jammed. It's not electromagnetic. It's... Thought, Vane interrupted. You're talking about thought. Humans have thoughts too, billions of them, all the time. Loud, messy, contradictory thoughts. He turned to his communications officer. Broadcast on all frequencies, full bandwidth. I want every human in this sector to start thinking. Loudly. I want a wall of noise so thick the hive can't find anything in it. Reyes stared at him. Captain, that's insane. We don't even know if... Commander Vex, Vane said. Would that work? Vex opened her mouth to say no. To explain that human thought patterns were completely incompatible with Xylorian resonance, that the hive would simply ignore the noise, that... But she stopped. Because she remembered something. During first contact, when the humans boarded her ship, she had felt something strange. A pressure at the edge of her telepathic senses. Not a thought she could understand, but a presence. Loud, aggressive, alive. Human thoughts weren't compatible with Xylorian frequencies. But they were still thoughts. And the hive, for all its power, had never encountered a species that thought the way humans did. Chaotically, irrationally, emotionally. It might, she whispered. It just might. Vane smiled, that terrifying, tooth-baring smile. Then, let's give them something to think about. The hive vessels changed course. They were no longer heading for the Void Whisper. They were heading for the Odysseus. And they were angry. The Odysseus burned hard for the protostar. Commander Vex watched from the observation deck as the star grew from a distant pinprick to a roiling wall of fire and radiation. The human ship shuddered with every gravity wave, its hull groaning like a living thing in pain. Behind them, the hive vessels gave chase. Closer now, close enough that Vex could see their twisted silhouettes against the nebula's glow. You're leading them into the radiation field, she said. Captain Vane stood beside her, arms crossed, face lit by the protostar's crimson light. That's the idea. The hive's ships are shielded. They can survive radiation that would cook your crew in seconds. Can they survive a star-going supernova? Vex's heart stopped. You're going to detonate it. Not on purpose. Vane's voice was calm, almost conversational. But the protostar is unstable. The hive's psychic field might be enough to push it over the edge. We just need to get close enough to make that happen. And us. The Odysseus has radiation shielding. Military grade. We'll take damage, but we'll survive. Vex looked at the human captain, really looked at him. She saw the lines around his eyes, the gray in his hair, the way his left hand trembled slightly when he thought no one was watching. He was afraid. They were all afraid. But he was going to do it anyway. Humans are insane, she said. Probably. Vane turned to face her. But here's the thing, Commander. The hive has conquered hundreds of species. They've seen everything the galaxy has to offer. They've never seen us. And what makes humans so special? Vane's smile faded. What replaced it was something Vex couldn't name. a kind of fierce tenderness, sharp as a blade. We don't give up, not when the odds are impossible, not when the enemy is invincible, not even when we're already dead. We keep fighting, because the only alternative is to stop, and stopping is the one thing we can't do. Behind them, the bridge erupted in alarms. "Captain," Reyes shouted, "the hive is accelerating. They'll be in weapons range in 10 minutes. Vane turned to his tactical officer. "Status on the broadcast." "Every human ship in the sector is transmitting. We've got cargo haulers, mining vessels, even a civilian transport. They're all sending psychic noise. The hive is confused, but it's not stopping." "It will," Vane said. "When we get close enough to the protostar, the radiation will amplify the broadcast. Every human thought in 100 light-years will be focused on that one point." Vex understood. "You're not trying to jam the hive, you're trying to overwhelm it." Vane nodded. "A billion human minds all screaming at once. The hive is a single consciousness. It can only process so much input. If we give it enough chaos, it might freeze, long enough for the protostar to collapse. Or," Reyes said darkly, "it might just kill us all." The deck shuddered. A console exploded, sparks and smoke filling the bridge. The hive had fired. "We're out of time," Vane said. "Commander Vex, get your people to the escape pods." Vex didn't move. "What about your crew?" "We'll follow, once we're in position." "You're lying." Vane met her eyes. For a moment, the mask slipped. She saw the truth beneath, the same truth she had carried for 800 cycles. The knowledge that some battles could not be won, only lost in a way that meant something. "Get to the pods, Commander. That's an order from the captain of this vessel." "You have no authority over me." "Then consider it a request from one dying species to another." Another explosion, closer this time. The lights flickered and died, replaced by emergency beacons. Vex made her choice. She turned and ran, not to the escape pods, but to the medical bay. Jorik was there, still weak but conscious, strapped to a human bed that was too small for his frame. Lina stood beside him, her crest flat with terror. "We're leaving," Vex said. "Now." "Where?" Lina asked. Vex looked back toward the bridge. Through the smoke and chaos, she could see Captain Vane standing at his station, calm as a stone in a storm. "To the pods," she said. "The humans are going to do something stupid. We're not going to let them do it alone." The hive's first ship emerged from the radiation cloud directly ahead of the Odysseus. Its weapons ports opened. Its psychic scream tore through the human ship's hull like glass. And in that moment, Commander Vex felt something she had never felt before. The thoughts of humans, billions of them, all focused on one thing. Not survival. Victory. The Odysseus plunged into the protostar's outer atmosphere. Heat shields that had never been tested at this temperature began to fail immediately. The human crew moved with desperate efficiency, sealing bulkheads, rerouting power, manually overriding systems that had melted into slag. They didn't panic. Commander Vex had seen panic. This was something else. This was purpose. "Radiation levels at 300%, Reyes reported. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook as she worked the controls. "Hull integrity at 62% and dropping. Captain, if we go much deeper." "We go deeper." Vane's face was slick with sweat. The bridge had grown unbearably hot. "What's the hive doing?" "Following, all 3 vessels. They're inside the radiation field now." Vex stood at the back of the bridge, her Xylorian body wrapped in a thermal blanket one of the humans had given her. The heat was agony. Her species had evolved on a cold world, and this was like being cooked alive. But she didn't leave. She couldn't. Because she was watching the humans work, and she was beginning to understand something terrible and wonderful. They weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting because fighting was who they were. "The broadcast," Vane said, "boost it full power." Communications officer Chen shook his head. "Captain, if we boost any higher, we'll burn out the array. We won't be able to transmit at all." "How long until the protostar collapses?" "At current radiation levels, 15 minutes, maybe less. Then we only need the array for 15 minutes. Boost it. Chen hesitated. Then he smiled, a thin, grim expression that Vex was beginning to recognize as the human version of courage. Yes, sir. He pulled a lever. The ship shuddered. Somewhere outside, Vex heard a deep, resonant hum, the sound of the human broadcast array operating at 1,000 times its rated capacity. And she felt it. The thoughts of 1 billion humans crashed into her telepathic senses like a physical wave. Not words. Humans didn't think in words the way Xylorians did. They thought in images, memories, emotions. Vex saw children laughing, soldiers weeping, lovers embracing, scientists arguing, artists creating, parents sacrificing. All of it, every human who had ever lived, every human who ever would live, compressed into a single moment of impossible, unbearable presence. She screamed. Not from pain, though there was pain. She screamed because she understood. The hive had consumed hundreds of species, each one thinking in neat, logical patterns, each one predictable, each one quiet. Humans were not quiet. Humans were a riot, a cacophony, a beautiful, terrible storm of contradiction and passion and stubborn, irrational hope. And the hive could not process it. On the view screen, the 3 hive vessels began to slow, not decelerating, stuttering. Their movements became jerky, uncoordinated, as if the single mind controlling them had suddenly developed a tic. It's working, Ray's breathed. Don't celebrate yet, Vane said. The protostar. The ship lurched. The view screen went white. When the image returned, the protostar had changed. Its surface was churning, great waves of plasma rising and falling, collapsing in on themselves. The hive's psychic field, already disrupted by the human broadcast, was interacting with the star's gravity in ways no one had predicted. It's going, Chen said. Captain, it's going. All hands, Vane said, brace for. The world ended. Vex was thrown across the bridge. She hit a bulkhead, felt something crack in her side, and then the lights went out. When they came back, flickering, failing, she saw chaos. Crew members bleeding on the deck, consoles in flames. And outside, through a crack in the viewport, she saw the hive vessels being pulled into the protostar's collapsing core. One by one, they vanished. Not exploded, not vaporized, simply taken, swallowed by the dying star as it folded in on itself. The psychic scream that followed was the worst thing Vex had ever heard. 1 billion voices crying out in terror and rage, and finally, silence. Then the shockwave hit. The Odysseus tumbled. Vex lost all sense of direction. Up became down became sideways as the human ship was batted away from the collapsing star like a toy. Alarms screamed. Metal shrieked. Somewhere someone was shouting orders, but the words were lost in the chaos. When the tumbling stopped, Vex found herself on the deck, staring up at a ceiling that was slowly filling with smoke. "Captain," she croaked. No answer. She pushed herself to her feet. Her cracked side screamed in protest, but she ignored it. She had to find. There, beneath a collapsed support beam, Captain Vane lay motionless, blood pooling beneath his head. Reyes was already there, pulling at the beam with strength Vex wouldn't have thought possible. "Medic! Medic!" Kaya appeared through the smoke, her face pale, her hands already reaching for Vane. She checked his pulse, his breathing, his eyes. "He's alive," she said, "but he won't be if we don't get him to surgery in the next 10 minutes." The bridge was a wreck. Half the crew was injured. The Odysseus was venting atmosphere from a dozen breaches. And Vex realized, with terrible clarity, that the humans had just sacrificed everything to save 4 aliens they'd met less than 2 days ago. "Why?" she whispered. Reyes looked up at her. The human commander's face was streaked with blood and soot, but her eyes were clear. "Because that's what we do," she said. "Now help me carry him." The Odysseus drifted in the darkness, broken and burning. Behind it, the protostar collapsed into a singularity, taking the hive with it. But ahead, in the cold void between stars, something else was moving. More human ships, responding to the broadcast, coming to answer the call. The galaxy was about to learn that humans didn't just rescue the dying. They avenged them. 3 weeks later, Commander Vex stood on the observation deck of the human vessel Resilience and watched the Odysseus being towed into dry dock. The ship was barely recognizable. Its hull was blackened, warped, punctured in 100 places. What had once been a proud vessel of the United Earth Fleet was now a collection of scrap metal held together by hope and welding torches. But it was there. It had survived. Just like Captain Elia's vein. "The doctors say he'll make a full recovery," Reyes said, stepping up beside Vex. The human commander looked different now, softer somehow. The hard edges of command had worn away, revealing something almost vulnerable beneath. "Brain swelling went down last night. He's been asking about you." "Me? You're kind of hard to forget," Reyes smiled. "Also, you saved his life. Kaya said if you hadn't pulled that beam off him when you did, he would have bled out before she got there." Vex remembered little of that moment, only the desperate strength that had flooded her alien muscles, the way she had lifted something 3 times her weight without thinking. Later, she would learn that this was another human trait they hadn't known about, the ability to exceed one's limits when someone else's life was at stake. The Xylorians had never developed that. They were logical, practical. They calculated risk and accepted loss. Humans didn't calculate. They refused. "The hive," Vex said, "is it truly gone?" Reyes shook her head. "The ships we destroyed were scouts. There are more. There are always more. But something changed when the protostar collapsed. The psychic feedback, our broadcast, combined with the hive's death scream, it propagated across the galaxy. Every hive mind within 1,000 light-years felt it." "Felt what?" Reyes turned to face Vex. Her eyes were bright with something that looked like tears, though she refused to let them fall. "Us, all of us, 1 billion humans thinking at once. The hive doesn't see us as prey anymore, Commander. It sees us as a threat. For the first time in its existence, it's afraid." Vex looked out at the repair docks. More ships were arriving now, dozens of them, then hundreds. Civilian vessels, military vessels, ships that had been scattered across the sector, responding to the Odysseus's broadcast. They weren't running away. They were gathering. "What will you do?" she asked. Reyes smiled. It was the same smile Captain Vane had worn when he first stepped aboard the Void Whisper. The smile that said, "We know we might die. We're going anyway." "We're going to find the hive's origin point," she said. "The source of the consciousness. And we're going to show it what happens when you hunt humans." "That's suicide." "Probably," Reyes shrugged. "But we're not going alone." She gestured to the docks. Vex looked closer and saw something that stopped her hearts. Xylorian ships, dozens of them, emerging from the nebula's edge, answering the same call that had brought the humans. They were old, damaged, barely spaceworthy, survivors of the hive's conquest, hiding in the darkness for centuries. And they were ready to fight. "The broadcast," Vex breathed. "You reached them." "We reached everyone." Reyes' voice was soft. "Your people have been running for a long time, Commander. They ran because they thought no one would come, but someone came. And now they know running isn't the only option." Vex felt something crack inside her. Not her ribs this time, something deeper. Something she had thought died 800 cycles ago when her world fell to the hive. Hope. Not the desperate, clinging hope of the dying. Something new, something fierce. Human hope. "What would you have us do?" she asked. Reyes extended her hand. Human gesture. Xylorians didn't touch. It was considered intimate, almost taboo. But Vex had learned many new things in the past 3 weeks. She took the hand. "Welcome to the fight," Reyes said. Epilogue. The Odysseus never flew again, but its name became legend. Captain Elia's vein recovered, accepted a promotion he didn't want, and spent the rest of his life advocating for first contact protocols that prioritized compassion over caution. Kaya Tanaka wrote the first comprehensive guide to Xylorian medicine, saving countless lives across both species. Commander Vex became the first Zalorian to serve in the United Earth Fleet, not as a refugee, but as an equal. She stood beside humans in battle after battle, watched them bleed and burn and somehow keep fighting, and she finally understood what made them different. Humans were not the strongest species, not the smartest, not the most advanced. But they were the only ones who looked at the darkness and said, "Not today." And when the Hive finally fell, years later, after a war that reshaped the galaxy, it was a human-Zylorian coalition that delivered the final blow. Not with weapons, not with psychic power. With a broadcast. A simple message, repeated on every frequency, in every language, across every light year of occupied space. You are not alone. Someone is coming, hold on. The Hive had spent 1 billion years teaching the galaxy that resistance was futile. Humans spent 1 generation teaching the galaxy that hope was not.